Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome to Iskcon Niagara Saturday weekly program. My name is Das, and I am your servant. And today we have a wonderful day, nice and bright, and so do we have a wonderful guest speaker. So I would just like to quickly make a few announcements, and then I will invite our guest speaker. Uh, Today is Saturday, June 5th, 2021, and today we will be hearing from His Grace Mahatma Das Prabhu. He is a disciple of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Also, prior to the actual lecture, Prabhuji will himself conduct today's kirtan. So a little bit about Prabhuji himself, that His Grace Mahatma Prabhu joined Iskcon in 1969 and was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1970. He travels widely facilitating workshops and retreats on such important practices as japa, forgiveness, humility, vows, and sexual purity. He has served as temple president, as book distributor, Sankirtan leader, college preacher, membership director, and VIHE, which is Vrindavan Institute of Higher Education, a teacher and co-director. He is also the co-director of Bhakti Life, a non-profit organization that teaches the practices of devotional service through interactive workshops, retreats, and online courses and counseling. He's best known in Iskcon for his recorded and live music and for his workshops on japa and forgiveness. He is the founder of Touchstone Training, a company that teaches the practices of devotional service through interactive seminars and workshops. He is also a facilitator in Bhagavad Life, producers of live and online workshops and japa retreats. He lives in Alachua, a very nice devotee community, with his wife Janva and daughter Braj Sundari. So prior to inviting Prabhu to do the opening kirtan, I would like to mention that Prabhu has several CDs to his credit: Brahma Samhita, Gurvastakam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the recitation in a very musical way, a nice rendition. And also, Prabhu does wonderful Sankirtan. So we are very fortunate to have Prabhuji here. It is said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahanta Sabhavei Tarite Pamar, Mahanta Sabhavei Tarite Pamar, Nijo Karya Nahi Tabu, Yan Tar Ghar. It is the general practice of saintly persons to deliver, therefore they go to people's houses. So we are very fortunate today to have Mahatma Prabhu to visit us in the comfort of our own homes through this virtual Zoom program. And they go to people's houses, although they have no personal business there. They only go to preach Krishna consciousness. So without further ado, I would like to invite His Grace, Mahatma Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Mahatma Prabhuji, please, you may unmute yourself.
Yes, now you can hear me, right? Yes? So, my first question, are we in Canada or are we in America? You're Niagara Falls, Canada? Is that correct?
Prabhuji, we cannot hear you. Is your
Krishna.
microphone unmuted at your end?
Hold on. Hare Krishna, Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita. Yes, no? Gadadhar. You can hear? Kavita can hear, but Sachinandan can't. So now what do we do? You can hear now? Sachinandan, you can hear? Okay.
Prabhuji, can
So
you
are we
hear
in
me?
Canada?
If you do,
Is this
give me a
Niagara
thumbs
Falls,
up.
Canada? Is this Niagara Falls, Canada, or is this the U.S.? Because I can't hear.
Vaishnav Prabhu, can you hear me?
I can barely hear you. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
So where are we? Is this
We're
Niagara
having
Falls?
some technical difficulty.
You can't hear me? Vaishnav, can you hear me?
Vaishnav Prabhu, can you unmute yourself and say something? I just want to make sure that I can hear you.
Haribol, I can hear both of you.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, welcome Mahatma to Niagara Falls, Canada.
Canada. I'm in Canada. Canada. Yes. Many times they almost didn't let me into Canada. And it was on my way to India. I was like, anyway, one moment. One moment. Nam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Simate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Shunyavadi Paschatya Tisatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Taigo Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.
So Hare Krishna, Prabhu will be speaking on a topic entitled, "On what you focus is what your life becomes." So welcome, Prabhuji. Welcome
Thank
to
you.
Iskcon Niagara. Thank you for making the time. Hare Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatyadastarine Manchakapaturavischa Kripasindhavya Chapati Tanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangu Langayati Girim Yakripatamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shaddaita Gadadhar Shivashari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. So we have this analogy in Bhagavad Gita of the chariot, the horses, the reins, the driver, the passenger, as an analogy of the senses, the mind, intelligence, and soul. Of course, that's not a contemporary example. So let's use a contemporary example of a car. So the engine's like the horses, and the steering wheel is the mind. The intelligence is the driver, and the passenger is us. So using that example, it's easy to understand that the mind is steering our lives. And therefore, the more the driver controls the steering wheel, then the better. If he doesn't control the steering wheel, he's going to crash, or he's going to end up somewhere he doesn't want to be. We have this other example, Dayato Vishayam Punsam, not example, we have this other shloka, Dayato Vishayam Punsam, whatever a person meditates on, what happens? Sangha. They become attached. And what happens when you become attached? Kama, you want it, you have to have it. So there's this process, which can work for you or against you, depending on what you're meditating on. But Krishna is describing this process of how we get sidetracked by our mind. There's many ways we get sidetracked. This is a specific example. So it begins, Dayato Vishayam Punsa. Vishaya means the objects of the senses. Dayato, as you know, means meditation. But Dayato, although we can say it's meditation, it's also, Prabhupada translates it as contemplation. So meditation, contemplation, we can also say focus. So when we talk about meditation, generally there's a connotation that you're sitting and you're doing some pranayam or chanting some mantra or maybe meditating on some shloka or some lila. But in the concept, in the context that we're speaking, we're talking about meditating specifically on something as a contemplation or as a focus. I'm focusing on something. So if I'm focusing on something, I can say I'm meditating on it. What am I focusing on? I'm focusing on a gulab jamun. Oh, really? You're meditating on a gulab jamun? Yes, I'm meditating. And I'm contemplating. Should I eat it or shouldn't I eat it? So what do you think is going to happen if you're hungry and you really like gulab jamuns and you're contemplating it for like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes? What do you think is going to happen? You're probably going to go eat it, or if it's in a store, you're probably going to buy it and then eat it. What do you think? Am I right? Yeah, right? Now, if you're diabetic, you probably shouldn't eat a gulab jamun, right? So if you're diabetic and you see something that you shouldn't eat, if you're smart, you will pass it by, right? You won't contemplate it, because you know if you contemplate, what happens after contemplation? What does Krishna say? Sangha. You're like, I really like that gulab jamun. Of course, this is not the end of the world if you eat a gulab jamun, but it's the same process takes place for things which could throw you off your bhakti. Wealth, fame, etc. Women, wealth, fame, these things. So it's the same principle. It could be a little thing or a big thing. So when you want to practice spiritual life, you are going to find there are a lot of things that you like that are not good for you. Have you noticed that? Like before you're a devotee, you don't really know they're not good for you. You just do them because you like to do them, right? Whatever it is, all your frivolous sports, your frivolous hobbies, eat this, eat that, go here, go there. And unless it's negatively impacting your health or your emotional well-being or your career, then you don't really have a problem with it. I don't want to say you don't have a problem controlling yourself, but when you become a devotee, you have a bigger problem controlling yourself because we're more restricted. And we realize that things are bad for us that previously we didn't know were bad for us, right? And the problem is we like those things. So what happens when you focus on something you like? Sangha. You become like, I want to get that. And then what happens if you don't pull out of the Sangat stage? It comes to Kama, I have to have it, right? I don't have a choice. When it comes to the Kama stage, there's no choice. You're gonna get it. Did you ever buy something you didn't want? Did you ever buy something you realized you didn't need? And when you got home, you asked yourself, why did I buy this? You went to the store to buy something and you ended up buying two somethings. One that you needed and one you really didn't need. Have you ever done that? Venkat, have you ever done that? Kavita, have you ever done that? Yeah. That's how our economy grows, right? We buy what we don't need. Get out there and shop. Keep the economy growing. You know, work hard and spend a lot of money. It's good for the economy. So this is the process. We see something, say, oh, that's nice. And the more we look at it, we read the label, think about it. At some point, the it's nice becomes it's very nice, becomes I have to have that. And then it's like, as Krishna says, at that point, you're pretty much out of control. Then you get home and you think, why was I so stupid to spend my money on that? I don't even need it. Some frustration. Or you take it out of the package, you use it, and then the frustration is, I didn't really need this. Why did I buy this? Or it sits on the shelf, right? So those of you from India, you know that America has this phenomena of storage sheds that you rent, right? Or you put in your backyard or your storage facility, right? They're like little houses. They're like little shanty towns for stuff we bought that we don't use anymore, right? You don't have that in India. You just have people. If you had a storage facility like that, people would be living in it, not junk, right? So why do we have that in America? Because we have more money. So relatively, even though things are less expensive in India, relatively speaking, they're less expensive here because of the cost of living and our income and so forth. So we have purchased many things we don't need. So that's the process. So now when it comes to our spiritual lives, we have a problem. As I was saying, there's so many things, so many samskars within our hearts of things that we like that are bad for us. And so the process of Krishna consciousness, at least part of the process of Krishna consciousness, is to learn how to deal with the mind so the mind doesn't trick us and create illusions and then cause us to act in the illusion that doing something that the intelligence knows is wrong, and it's not going to make us happy, and it's going to hurt our bhakti, but still we let the mind control us. So we have to learn that process, right? So I think the best thing we could do now, at least for a little while, is just talk about the nature of the mind and how it works. Because if we don't understand it clearly and how it works, then it can be a huge problem for us. So let's go back to some very basic philosophy. Jiva Tattva is nature. By constitution, Jiva Tattva is independent. As Prabhupada says, we're independent because we're part and parcel of Krishna. He's independent, but he's supremely independent, and we're not supremely independent. But our independence allows us enough free will to either serve Krishna or not. So we definitely have choice, right? And in the last verse of the 3rd chapter of the Gita, Krishna says, the intelligence, because it's higher than the mind and higher than the senses, that's what you need to use to control your mind. If you don't use intelligence, the driver will just go anywhere. And we are supposed to tell the driver where to go, right? Well, actually in this example, we're supposed to tell the steering wheel where to go, right? The driver's the intelligence. But we the soul is the passenger. Let's go back to the example. We the soul are the passenger. The passenger should tell the driver where to go. When the passenger doesn't tell the driver where to go, driver can go wherever he wants. So, have you ever said, it's difficult to control my mind? Have any of you ever said that? If you haven't said it, you're not a bona fide devotee. Take off your tilak and neck beads if you haven't said that. Yeah. So every devotee has said that. Why? Because when you become a devotee, actually trying to control your mind much more than you ever had to control it before you were a devotee. And what happens when you try to control something? You realize how difficult it is to control, right? Isn't that what Arjuna told Krishna? He said, like, my mind is like, forget it. I can't do it. It's like the raging wind. And Krishna said, he said, you can do it, but it's going to be difficult. You're going to have to practice it. So what did Krishna mean? He meant yes, I know, Arjuna, it's difficult to control the mind. As a conditioned soul, it's difficult to control the mind. You can do it. It's going to require practice. You have to know what you're doing. So the first thing that I think is extremely valuable to deal with this, I can't control my mind system. I can't control my mind idea. Prabhu, my mind is stubborn. Prabhu, you have no idea how strong my mind is. You have no idea how much illusion my mind can put me in, right? Have you ever done something and after you did it, you can't believe you did it? It's like, why did I do that? Or we look at our whole life before we became devotees and we sometimes wonder, how could I have done that? What was I thinking? Why was that going on? So the first point that is necessary we understand this, but we forget it. The first point which is necessary to understand is we, as a soul, are higher than the mind. So we have all the power to control the mind. So if you ever say, my mind is difficult to control, that may be true, but don't ever say, I can't control my mind, because it's not true. Krishna has given you the free will independence to plant any thought in your mind or take any thought out of your mind. You agree? Well, let's say it another way. You might say, well, sometimes I get thoughts in my mind, I can't take them out. I say, okay, let's go with that idea. But Krishna has given you the independence to not have to put attention on that thought. Right? Who decides where your attention goes? You do. Right? So, the real problem, as I see it, is twofold. One, sometimes we think we're powerless against the mind. We just think it's so strong, I can't control it. And number two, we don't realize that controlling the mind really, when it comes down to it, means controlling your attention, what you're putting your attention on. Because we have, how many thoughts do we have a day? 30,000, 40, 50,000, depends how fast you think, right? But this is what psychologists tell us. Let's say 50,000. We have 50,000 thoughts a day, right? How many of those thoughts do you focus on? Well, you focus on what's important, right? You choose what you focus on, don't you? Even though you may not seem like it, but we're really choosing what we focus on. Then all of a sudden the gulab jamun catches our attention and we shouldn't eat it because we're diabetic. So what do? We choose not to focus on it and we just walk right by it and don't think about it, right? Because as long as we don't focus our attention on it, the desire for it won't grow. That's what we have the power to do. So in my experience, I think a lot of devotees do not fully believe at heart that they can actually control their minds. They think that they're partially, or from time to time, they're under the control of their mind, and there's nothing they can do about it. And all these thoughts are coming, and there's nothing they can do about it. These thoughts are going to come because they were planted in our previous lives and in our lives before devotees. The thoughts will come. That's not a problem. What Krishna has given us is the independence to choose if we're going to focus on those thoughts or not. So that's very important to understand. You have the power not to focus on them. Don't ever think you don't have the power. Don't let anybody ever say you don't have the power. And if anyone ever gives a class and says, we don't have the power to control our minds, raise your hand and say, no, it's not true. And otherwise, Krishna wouldn't have told Arjuna, you could do it. He didn't say, yeah, Arjuna, mine's more difficult to control the wind. So, you're just going to have a tough life and, nothing I can do to help you. No. So Krishna is saying, no, you can. It's difficult, but you can. You have to practice. So what's the practice? Well, let's meditate on this. Every time we contemplate something which is against pure devotional service, it embeds that tendency a little more strongly within our mind and heart, right? It's becoming a habit, right? Every time I see that gulab jamun and I eat it, then, well, let's go back. Every time I see the gulab jamun, and I don't eat it, it's going to be easier next time to be able to control myself when I see it. Every time I see it and I give into it, it's going to be more difficult the next time to control myself. Isn't it? Because we're creating, through our own volition, we're creating habits of how we think. We're training ourselves, right? So a man sees a beautiful woman. What does he do? If he's a devotee, especially brahmachari, but all devotees, but especially brahmachari, he's trained himself that he's not, some beautiful woman walks right in front of him on the train or something. He's going on Sankirtan. So he's just trained himself, not that, he can't not see her, but he doesn't contemplate. He's trained himself that way. And every time he does that, it becomes easier the next time to do it. Correct? And every time he fails to do that, it becomes more difficult the next time. You agree? So Krishna is saying, you learn to control your mind by practice. So that practice, that's Vaidhi Bhakti. I'm practicing, not focusing on objects of sense gratification, even though I want to enjoy them. But I'm practicing. The mind is saying go, and I'm practicing going the other direction. And if I practice it long enough, what happens? Then it starts to become a habit. And you get really good at focusing on what you want to focus on. Have you ever focused on something you don't want to focus on? It just kind of caught you and you couldn't get it out of your mind? Has that ever happened? Searching something on the internet, or you're shopping, or one video after another, and you go down the rabbit hole and it's just like hours go by and you're like, why did I do that? I have a little mantra for you. When these things happen, when I can't say it's going to solve every problem every time, but at least it's a mantra to contemplate. And you tell yourself, I don't have to do this. There's nothing in the world forcing me to do this other than my own free will choice to continue to do it. And that's very empowering. And that is our philosophy. And I know you might say, but when I'm falling down the rabbit hole, it doesn't seem like I have control. That's because you've given your control to your habit. So what did Krishna say? Practice. Practice. Right? Another verse, Krishna says, you have to learn to tolerate. How do you learn something? You practice it. So this Vaidhi Bhakti, what's Vaidhi Bhakti? It's practice. Okay, let's take it to another level, which is very interesting. Have you ever been upset with a devotee? I assume, or just upset with anybody. Of course, the answer is yes. So what happens when you're upset? You meditate on that person, isn't it? You meditate on how the person hurt you, all the things that you wish they hadn't done. And it's very difficult to get that person out of your mind, isn't it? You had that experience? They get in there, they get in your heart, and they kind of just stay there for a while. And you're really miserable thinking about them, and you really wish you didn't have to think about them, but you are. Has that ever happened to you? It's painful. Isn't that painful? Right? So now we have this mantra. I don't have to do that. I can actually let it go. Now, as I said before, sometimes it doesn't actually seem like we could stop doing it. No, I can't get this person out of my mind. What they did, what they said to me was so bad, I can't stop thinking of them in a negative way. It's not true. It only seems like you can't, but you can, because you, the soul, are above intelligence, mind, and senses. If you're above them, why can't you stop thinking? At least from a philosophical perspective, there's no Shastric proof that you can't stop thinking that way, unless you allow yourself to be controlled by the modes of nature. Right? Could you at that point, when this person really upsets you, and you're getting really, really upset, could you tell yourself, I could let this go if I wanted to? Or could you tell yourself, why don't you just let this go? This has no benefit for you. Just drop it. You could say that to yourself, right? Nobody's stopping you from saying that. And in the same way, nobody's actually stopping you from doing it. You could actually do it. Isn't that wonderful? Because you have the free will. So it's the material world, and there's going to be lots of things that disturb us. And we're going to have a lot of reasons to forget Krishna. Because there's a lot of things around us to distract us from Krishna. So as we contemplate, things tend to get more powerful. The more you contemplate how you don't like the person who hurt you, the more you don't like them, isn't it? The more you think about it, they said this, they said that, that was wrong, it was unfair, they shouldn't have done it, how could they do that? And as you go over it in your mind, the intensity of your disgust or anger or resentment or whatever it is you're experiencing generally increases, isn't it? And at that moment, it feels like I have no control over this. This is what this person did is hurting me, disturbing me, it's paining me. It's very empowering to remind yourself that I don't have to hold on to this. I could let it go. So just like in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear so many verses about detachment, right? Don't be attached to anything other than Krishna consciousness, right? Okay, so let's look at that in a slightly different way. Are we ever attached to being angry? Have you ever been attached to being angry? Like you couldn't control it? Like people are trying to calm you down? So have you ever been attached to being resentful or envious or jealous? And I think the honest answer is yes, because if I couldn't give it up, I must be attached to it, right? Otherwise, why am I doing it? I'm like attached to getting back at this person. This person hurt me. I'm attached to getting back at them in some way. I'll tell other people they hurt me. I'll pray that they'll get hurt. I'll pray that they'll get embarrassed in some way. People will find out, etc. So what's happening? It's a different kind of attachment. It's not a gross physical attachment. It's an attachment to a certain way of thinking, a certain attitude, a certain feeling. So when we speak of detachment, we shouldn't only speak of detachment in terms of physical things. We should also speak of detachment in terms of mental states, of attitudes, of states of consciousness that we have to detach from. I have to let that resentment go. I have to let that envy go. I have to let that jealousy go. I have to let that hatred go. Isn't it? Can you do it? You can. Will you do it is another question. But I just wanted to make this point clear that you can actually do it even when you think you can't. And you just ask yourself, or you tell yourself, you could let go of this right now. Will you do it? Are you willing to let go? Are you willing to stop? And I just want you to know you have the power to say yes. I don't know if you'll say yes. I don't even know if you'll ask the question, but you have the power to say yes. That's a fact. So, as I was saying before, I want to underscore this point that if you do that and you do it regularly and continually, you are going to build up your muscle of mind control, because you will start programming yourself to control your thoughts, to control your attitudes. Now, there's this idea that thoughts are like seeds, and you plant a seed and it manifests into something. And so we know in our lives, nothing happens unless you conceive of it first, right? You can't, nothing's created. Wherever you are in your life, the conception was long before you arrived, because you had to follow a path, go to school, follow a certain career path, etc. Make a decision, you want to move to Canada, etc. It all begins with the thought. So don't think of thoughts as something abstract. It's better to think of them as things, because thoughts manifest in reality. Thoughts are just subtle forms of matter, subtle forms of energy that then manifest grossly. And when you know that, when you understand that, you become more careful about what you think, because you know, if I plant this seed thought and I water it, it's going to start to grow into something. The good thing is, if it's the right thought, it will grow also. If it's the wrong thought, it's going to grow into something you don't want. So it's important to understand that. And the more you understand it, the more careful you would be about thinking. Let me give you an example. You know the story about the man sitting in front of the desire tree, and he said, this desire tree is like really interesting. You know, anything I think happens. It's like, what? So he started thinking, you know, what if I had this? And it would just, he'd have it. And what if I have that? And then it would come. Then he thought, wow, I wonder what if a tiger came and ate me, and the tiger shows up, and you know. So the mind is a bit like that, although we don't see it in real time, that as soon as we think something, it manifests, but it does manifest over time. So it's really important to understand this, that we're manifesting everything from our thoughts. And if every thought we had immediately manifested, our life would be interesting, wouldn't it? And if that were true, we would be extremely careful about what we think or what we put attention to, wouldn't we? If like there was like a time lapse of 60 seconds between thought and manifestation, if that's how it worked, we would be extremely careful about what we think. And if we had the wrong thought, we would try to ignore it, because if we didn't, we would be in trouble. Plus, we would think, well, if I could manifest anything in 60 seconds, then what should I be thinking about? And so I'd be thinking of things which would be helpful for me and helpful for other people. And I could manifest those things in my life. The point is, it's like that. It doesn't take 60 seconds. It will take longer. But things manifest from the mind. And when you understand that, you become very, very careful about what you're thinking about, because what you're thinking about draws attention and attraction, and it starts to manifest. Isn't it? So the reason I'm saying all these things is I've observed in my own life and the life of devotees that maybe we don't take this seriously enough, or we don't understand it clearly, how manifestation physically is all a ramification of what's going on thinking. Even on the psychological level, you all know, if you have to do something, but you think, I can't do this, it's too difficult, you'll never succeed at it, isn't it? Even if you have the ability. You ever seen a person, they actually have the ability and they think they can't do it, and they can't succeed at it because they psych themselves out. So even on that level of thinking, if one thinks, I can't do this, or one thinks I can do it, it's more likely the person who thinks he can do it will succeed. And the person who thinks he can't do it will fail, despite the qualifications of those people. So The mind is very powerful. If you study psychology a little bit, you'll see this huge, huge connection between mind and body and illness created by the mind. And, fight or flight, cortisol and adrenaline when you're in a dangerous situation, the body's reacting chemically to what? The mind, states of mind. Or when you're relaxing, then endorphins. And so the mind is like a pharmacy. Did you know that? The mind is like a pharmacy. It creates all these chemicals, isn't it? This one teacher said, I could completely alter the chemistry of your body in 10 seconds. They said, how? He said, I'll just take out a gun and point it at all of you and say, I'm going to kill one of you. He said, that would alter your body chemistry very quickly, wouldn't it? So what's going on in the mind is manifesting outside of us. It's manifesting inside of us. It's even affecting other people. Like when we were with Prabhupada, it was like his Krishna consciousness was just infiltrating our heart because his heart was affecting our heart. His thinking was affecting our thinking. So when we talk about thoughts, we really have to see the power of thoughts. They're not like just innocent things. But thoughts can get you into tremendous trouble, and thoughts can get you right out of the material world. Now, I want to tell a story that when I was a young devotee, I really couldn't understand how you could think of Krishna all the time, because I was just, trying to get my rounds done and do some service. And that took all my mental energy, basically. Just kind of staying alive in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada always stressed preaching. So we were out there, Harinam Sankirtan every day, and Sunday feast, distributing Back to Godhead magazines. And so we were dedicated to preaching. Then we started traveling and doing book distribution, meeting new people, going on radio, television, very exciting. And Prabhupada was very, very happy when we were expanding Krishna consciousness. So I was confused, and I thought, when you're doing all these activities, your mind is very absorbed in thinking on a practical level, how to execute these activities. And you're not really thinking of Krishna, his Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. You're not thinking, maybe his name you might be chanting, but you're not really focused on it. And so on him in his form or his Lila. And so, but because Prabhupada always praised devotees when they did their service and always encouraged service, I was thinking, well, is service more important than thinking, number one? And if you're that busy doing service, can you actually be absorbed in thinking about Krishna? Because they seemed like two different things. Like I could sit down and read Bhagavatam. Now I'm thinking of Krishna. I could just spend many hours a day chanting and contemplating Leela. But when I'm busy, that kind of thinking doesn't come to me. And I was confused about it. Like, can you actually do it? And are you actually supposed to do it? Because it seemed like you can't do it. And it seemed like in my state, you can't do it. And it seemed like what Prabhupada wanted was just preach, because he would always praise us when we preached. So that was my dilemma. So I wrote a letter to Prabhupada. It's probably like 1970, maybe. I was in Vancouver then, and I had to make a report every month. I was the president, so I would ask, when I had questions, I would ask Prabhupada. So I asked him this question, like Krishna consciousness, it does mean think of Krishna, but is that actually for us, or is that just like something that's going to happen in the future when we have love of Krishna? And then Prabhupada wrote me and he said, the whole point of everything is to be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. Now, he never said that you do that by doing less service, because that's what I thought. I thought the service was getting in the way of thinking of Krishna. He said, you don't do it by less service. That's not the idea. The idea is that whatever you do, depend on Krishna, and then you'll think of him. But he made the point that the goal is to always think of Krishna in his form, in his Leela, of course, his service, think of his devotees, all these other things. But it's not that service was meant to replace this meditation, that we should be Krishna conscious. We should be thinking of Krishna in some way. And I understand now why Prabhupada said that, because if I'm not thinking of Krishna, what am I thinking of? Right? Who am I thinking of? If I'm not thinking of him, who am I thinking of? Well, just turn your finger around and point it to you. That's why Prabhupada's saying a whole goal is to think of him, because when you think of him, what are you thinking of? How to please him. Rishikesh, how to please his senses. As soon as you stop thinking of him, what do we think of? Our senses and how to please them. Right? Because that's what we've done for 1,000,000 lifetimes. So I think it's important to understand that's the process. Like Prabhupada said, if a young man is sexually agitated, he should do deity worship. Worship Krishna. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Get your mind on Krishna. Get your mind off yourself and off your own desire. Get it on Krishna. So the point again is we do have control to do these things, but the mind is going to resist, the mind is going to fight, the mind is conditioned, the mind is going to pull us away. And then if we let our mind pull us, then what we focus on becomes bigger, 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 right? So the way I look at it is like, if something I focus on is going to become bigger, let me focus on something Krishna conscious. Let that become bigger. Let me focus on my goals of service. Let that become bigger. Let that cover my mind. All I can think about is how I can expand my service. How can I serve the devotees? How I can advance in Krishna consciousness. Let me think that way and get absorbed in thinking that way and let that expand. That draws me into Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, the opposite happens. So that's what I wanted to say, and I said it. So I know we have, I think I was supposed to go like, what, till 5:30 or something? But anyway, maybe we could have some discussion or questions at this point. So,
Hare Krishna, Mahatma Dasa. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bolo. Jai Prabhupada.
Pranam, all grace to Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the
You're
wonderful
welcome.
class. Prabhu, I was so impressed when you delivered in North American Leaders Meeting last November.
Huh.
And the points you said, I still remember very nicely. But so I was really, it's very nice. No, today also you put up very, very good things, Prabhu. Prabhu, I've got so many questions. I don't know whether host will allow me to ask, but at least I'll start with one and then let the host give me permission for further questions. So I'll start with Prabhu. We all know that the spirit soul is encaged by the material body, and material body has got the senses. Arjuna said to Krishna that, oh Krishna, senses are so impetuous that any one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses, the intelligence will be carried away. At the same time, you said, dhyayato visayan pumsam sangaste supajayate, sangat sanjayate, kama kaman krodha vijayate. It's a cycle. Whatever you contemplate on, in fact, that's the topic of the day, where you are focusing. Dhyayato is the contemplation. So my question, Prabhu, to you is, when the senses are so much impetuous, which Krishna confirms, Arjuna also says, Chanchalahi mana Krishna. So, and then Krishna first time ever agrees to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita is that, yes, Arjuna, I agree that the mind is chanchalam, is flickering, uncontrollable. It's so difficult to control the wind, but still Arjuna says, I can control, but it's more difficult. And first time Arjuna, so far Krishna never ever, Krishna was, putting Arjuna down. First time ever in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna agreed to Arjuna, yes, Arjuna, I agree. So, having said that, Prabhu, even Krishna said to Arjuna that Mama Maya Durate, my Maya is so strong that it's very difficult to overcome. So, Prabhu,
Yeah.
all these things are in front of us. from
Yeah,
Shastra.
yes, yes.
Now, the fact is, we have got the material body, which has got senses, which are so impetuous. We also have the anarthas, as you said, which are a subtle form of all these things. The lust, anger, greed, envy, all those are subtle form. So how do a soul would come out? Because the soul wants to go to Krishna, but the Maya is pulling him down. Not only the Maya, and it is the job of Maya, Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada said very clearly that if you, the second, not the moment, the 1 second you forget Krishna, Maya will fill in the gap. So I am creating the platform for you to understand and for all of us to understand how difficult it is for all of us to remember constantly Krishna and never forget him.
Yes.
Prabhu, how do we come out of this trap, should I say?
Krishna, help me. We've lately been giving class on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Gopinath. And what you expressed was exactly what he expresses in his song. One of the first lines of the song is, "Everywhere is your Maya, and I'm helpless." Like I can't fight this. And the mood of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and also Narottam Das Thakur and all of them, the mood is this is impossible. If it's like me asking you, I need you to make $10 billion this year. And let's say you're a good businessman. You go, well, I maybe I could make 50 million. I couldn't make 10 billion. I know you have to make 10 billion. How do I do that? I don't know. You have to. You say, this is impossible. How many people could make $10 billion in a year, starting from scratch? So it's something like that. So let me tell you a story. Prabhupada, maybe you know this story. Before Prabhupada went to America, right before he went to America, he went to Mayapur to pay obeisances to his Guru Maharaj. And then he went to the temple, which is at the place of Nandan Acharya's house. Because he used to go there as a grihastha somehow or other. I guess he was attached to that place. And he was chanting japa and he was crying. And it so happens that pujari eventually recognized him from the grihastha days. It was difficult at first because he was wearing Prabhupada was wearing saffron. And he recognized because Prabhupada used to go there. And Prabhupada was crying. And he said, "Why are you crying?" And Prabhupada said, "Because my spiritual master has given me an impossible task that I'm totally unqualified to do. And so I'm just crying." So if we look at that Gopinath song, it's exactly like that. Like, here's my list of qualifications, 0. And here's my list of disqualifications, 1 after another after another. So knowing this, Krishna, and I know you are kind to the fallen, all I can do is say, Krishna, if you don't help me, I'm finished. It's impossible. I can't do it. So that's the general foundation. I'll say some more things, but that's the general foundation. And that's the humility of the devotee, that he knows that. Then I just heard a story today, really nice story. Rabindranath Swarup told that there was in God We Trust party. It was a political party, and devotees were actually running for office. And I don't know if it was Rabindranath Swarup Prabhu or someone said, Prabhupada, all these leaders, they get power, and they may be like nice people, but then they get power, often they misuse it, and they become very demoniac. And so Prabhupada was asked, he was asked, do you ever see that in the future, Iskcon will be the leaders of the world? And Prabhupada said, yes, I see that. And said, Prabhupada, then just like these people, when they get power, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Will we become demons like them when we get that power? And Prabhupada said, no, 16 rounds, 4 principles. You're safe. So this was, if you really made an analysis of your question, like, let's say you were doing a master's degree in this question. I think this would be the answer that would keep coming up. 16 rounds, 4 principles. Like that just, it's like everything is against us. We're conditioned souls. We can't, like everything you said, we can't fight Maya. It's hopeless. Control the mind. It's like the battle's lost, but you have Krishna on your side. So it doesn't matter now. 16 rounds, 4 principles. It like throws the whole system upside down, right? Here we are, born in America, never heard of Krishna, Bhagavad Gita till we were like 19 years old. And 51 years, we're still here. How did that happen? And you ask us, how did that happen? And we say, I have no idea. It's impossible. But I did it, right? How? 16 rounds, 4 principles. So I think in answer to this question, we might minimize the power of the holy name. We can only realize how powerful it is according to how well we chant. Because when we chant well, we access that power, and then we realize, yeah, it's the holy name. But if you take that away, just do deity worship, or just study Bhagavatam, it's probably not going to be enough. But when we have the holy name, then it turns the whole equation. That now I can do that. Somehow or other, I'm doing it. These young men are sannyasis. How are they doing that? So, and, what you said, Prabhupada knew better than any of us. And he's giving initiation to these young people in New York who've been coming for a few weeks. Why? Because he has so much faith in the holy name that if they take it, it'll change their life. And it doesn't matter what they did in the past. That's Prabhupada's faith. So that's my realization of this, which is why I was saying we can give up all this thinking. We can be victorious because we have 16 plus 4. And the better those 16 are, and the more strictly those 4 principles are, the easier it's going to be for you. And then I've had experience. It sounds like I'm tooting my horn, so to speak, but that's not the reason I'm saying this, but I just want you to hear my story. I was facilitating a japa workshops, like 5-6 day retreats. And at one time I was facilitating a lot of them. And so, 5 days with devotees, chanting, talking about the holy name. Then a few weeks later, 5 days with devotees, chanting the holy name, 5 days, 64 rounds. Then, a few weeks later, I was like, way up there. I was feeling so transcendental. And at that point, because my chanting was so good, I actually felt like I didn't know what Maya was. Like I lost touch with Maya, so to speak. Not because I'm great, but because the holy name is great. And people would say, how are you doing? And I would say funny things like, I would say, yeah, I'm doing great. I haven't seen Maya in weeks. Like that. I don't know where she went, but I haven't seen her. That's the power of the holy name. Or we have experience in spreading Krishna consciousness. You become so dear to Krishna. You get so much mercy, distributing his books, bringing other people in. And when you get that mercy, it's like you overcome yourself, not because you're overcoming it, because you get the mercy. And through that mercy, you're overcoming yourself. So the last line of that verse, 7:14, you'll easily cross beyond what's impossible to, the ocean becomes a little puddle. So that's my realization. And I think that's an important realization, because if we don't have faith in that, we might, when we say, oh, the mind's impossible to control, we'll believe it. And I want to say something, Pitambar, that's so funny. Devotees always say, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said the mind is more difficult to control than the wind. Yeah, but that's Arjuna, that's not Krishna. So we kind of use that as an excuse. Well, after all, I can't control my mind. After all, Bhagavad Gita says, no, it's Arjuna said it. The conditioned soul said it. Krishna said you can, but you've got to practice. So that's why I focused on that side, because That's that's Prabhupada. Prabhupada was like, we're facing the material world. We have so many trouble. And Prabhupada's saying, with one kick, I could kick out all your Maya, provided you're prepared to follow my instructions. You've heard that statement before? One kick, I can kick out all your Maya, provided you. So that was Prabhupada's mood. And that's why we were like fearless. Like we never thought Maya would get us, because Prabhupada was like, just go, preach. Maya cannot touch you, and that was our experience. But as soon as we stopped, then completely like run over by a truck of Maya, just like helpless. I can't control myself. So it's really interesting how after one 64 round day at a japa retreat, we had a slideshow. And it was like I was on drugs. It was, those pictures of Krishna had never been that attractive to me before. I was looking, after chanting the whole day, I'm looking at these pictures and Krishna, that threefold bending form, and I'm looking at it going, the way he's bending, that's like so attractive, and the way he's looking. But I never felt it to that degree before, right? And when we're in Maya, it just flip it around. Then it's the form of the opposite sex that's so attractive, that we weren't noticing was attractive when we were in Krishna consciousness, and vice versa. So when I think that Prabhupada was bold enough to give initiation, and maybe even a bolder move to send them out a year later around the world to open temples, it shows us that he knew 16 plus 4, and they'd be safe, and nothing could stop them. And that's history, right? They did it. Jagai and Madhai, of course, is the best example of that. So I think it's so important for us to have that kind of faith that, Maya is insurmountable, and you can go down the rabbit hole, contemplation, lust, the enemy and destroyer and all that. But if you don't go down that road, you're safe. You never have to deal with it. That's just a bad neighborhood. So, you don't go in that bad neighborhood, you're fine. You're never going to get held up. You'll never have a problem. I was in South Africa. Last time I was there, we were driving, and we were at a traffic light, and the devotee said, if we turn left here, there's a good chance there's going to be someone who'll come to the car with a gun and steal the car. I said, really? He goes, yeah, we don't go up that street. That's kind of interesting for us, isn't it? where I think where you live, you don't have that problem. So it's like, okay, I just know what street to go on and what not to go on. And I think it's that way in our lives. And if we go on the right street, we're fine. Everything's good, isn't it? And we go, you go down this contemplation, you get weak, bad rounds, get a little slippery on the 4 principles, make a few offenses here, and then you're saying, it's so hard, it's impossible, I can't control my mind. It's because you didn't follow the process. You chant without offense, you serve the Vaishnavas, you follow strictly the principles. It's just the opposite. So it's a good discussion, because it makes it really clear that there is this fine line, and you can go very high this way, or you could go very fast down if you're not careful. And that's our experience. And even if you hit bottom, you can get back up if you just start doing that again. And even if you go all the way up, you can go back down if you offend a devotee, stop chanting your rounds like that. So we've seen it all. So that's my realization. And I meet so many devotees that they feel like they can't be Krishna conscious, and I always try to encourage them. It's not about you. It's about the holy name. The holy name will do it. You don't have to do much. Just take 16 pills a day and follow 4 principles. That's the medicine that will do it. It's so you don't have to worry about, I'm not strong enough. You don't have to be. That will make you strong. That's your protein shake. That'll make you strong. That's my realization. Is that okay?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Wonderful answer. I have got another follow-up question, but I need to ask as a courtesy to the host, if I can ask.
Okay. We're going to get to Kavita's question.
If I can suggest something, Pitambar Prabhu, if there's somebody else, we can give them a chance, and then if time permits, we can continue with your second part of the
Okay.
question.
I
Is that
see
fair?
Kavita has a question, but it may be similar to what
Yeah.
you
So
want
we
to
have
say something,
Kavita
Kavita?
Mataji, she wants to ask a question. Kavita Mataji, please
Yes,
unmute yourself.
yes. Prabhuji, you are right. It was a similar question as
Yeah.
Pitambar Prabhu. And later on, when you were answering his question, my mind was getting clearer and clearer. But now I have my second question that we are doing, like, I'm talking about myself, like chanting. So my problem is I'm chanting from my mouth, but my mind is like not there.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to understand, does it happen to me only? Or like, or like,
No.
you know, people are able to concentrate 16 rounds
Are they?
without any thoughts, like wandering thoughts?
Yeah. The answer is yes and yes. You are not the only one it happens to, and yes, there are people that can focus. The best, I can give you two little pointers right now that might help you. This is just gained from experience over the years of chanting. Our minds are engaged every day in practical affairs. You know, whether it's work or just maintaining our body, shopping, going to the doctor, dealing with life, our minds are always engaged in practical things. We're always thinking, right? After your program is over, then your mind starts thinking, okay, I guess, well, it's time to cook dinner now, or I have to go out and do this and that. So that's how the mind's working, right? And so it's like it's habituated to work that way, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the mind helps us survive in this world. The problem is when you leave it on while you're chanting. So when you leave the mind on while you're chanting, it keeps doing that, right? So you're chanting around at 6 a.m. thinking, well, at 8:30 I have to be in the office and do A, B, and C, and D. So you're actually not sitting in front of your altar. You're actually in the office. It's just your body's in front of the altar, but your mind's in the office. And there's this sound coming out, as you rightly said, of your mouth, not out of your heart. And so your Hare Krishna is coming out of your mouth, and you're in the office, or you're in your, thinking about what you have to do in the day, or so many things. So one of the things that I suggest devotees to overcome this problem is that before you chant, you try to disengage yourself from your life. It's like, now I'm chanting, so I have to pull the plugs out of all these things in my life, and I will come back to them after I chant. After I finish chanting, I will come back to them. Those are not things to bring in to my japa. Let's give an example. Let's say you are going to visit your children somewhere. Let's say your children don't live with you. Maybe your children in India and you're going to go back and visit them. So when you come off the plane and you get in the terminal and see them, what if you're thinking about, 30 things that were anxieties for you, and while they're talking to you, that's what you're thinking about? You would not be present. And it's unlikely you would be thinking like that, because when you see them, you want to be present for them, right? So it's the same thing with japa. It actually, if you think about it, it doesn't make sense to be thinking about our life when we're chanting, does it? So what the mistake a lot of devotees make is they don't consciously just tell themselves, now I'm chanting, so I'm not going to be doing anything in my mind. I'll just stop that. And everything that's going on in my life, I just press the pause button. Okay, we'll put it on pause. I'll get back to it when I finish chanting. So that it's kind of like a message to your mind that I don't need you to think now, right? Because that thinking is impractical for me now. I need you to think, at 8:30 when I go out. Then you can start thinking, because I have to do those things. I don't have to do them now, so I don't need you to think about them. So you have to make some contract with your mind, which you can work out in your own way. But I just say, my life's plugged in, unplug it, or just put the wall on it, and which is why getting up early is so good, because you don't have to do anything at 5 a.m, right? Most of us. So you don't really have to think of anything at 5 in the morning. So it's easier not to think of it. If it's 8 in the morning and you go to work at 9, it's harder not to think of it. So the second thing is, ask yourself when you're chanting, what am I doing? What's the purpose of it? What am I trying to accomplish? Because we forget the purpose of it. I'm praying for pure devotional service. That's what I'm doing. Well, if I'm actually praying for pure devotional service, let me look at myself. It doesn't really look like I'm praying. It looks like I'm just trying to get my rounds done, right? Or it looks like I'm really distracted. So no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not just trying to get my rounds done. I'm praying. I'm trying to pray. So when you start connecting with what you're doing, then there's an alignment between what the mantra means and your consciousness and your whole being. Otherwise, it's a disengagement. It's like if I say, Kavita, I really appreciate you, all your service and everything you're doing. But what if I said it like this? Kavita, I really appreciate all the service you've been doing. It's like really fantastic. You'd look at me and think, that's strange. It doesn't seem like he appreciates it. So we're Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Krishna, please engage me. You're so pure devotion. I'm suffering in the material world. And it was like, I really want to get out of here and I really want pure. It doesn't look like that's what you want. So we've disconnected and we've made it like a process, just like well, if I say 16 rounds times 108, I've done it. Well, that's not what it is. So when you said my lips are moving, Bhaktisiddhanta said the heart has to move the lips. And if the heart doesn't move the lips, you're not really chanting. The lips, the name doesn't come from your lips, it comes from your heart. So if I say, Kavita, I really, really appreciate your service. I'm so impressed by what you do. I see you're so sincere. You feel that when I say it. But if I don't say it that way, you don't feel it. And so Krishna doesn't feel it when we're Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. What does Krishna feel? He feels nothing because you feel nothing. Krishna feels what you feel, right? So if we feel nothing, what's he going to feel? The same nothing we feel. Isn't it? Isn't that interesting?
One more thing.
Yeah.
Let's say that it's not easy to concentrate for a person like me.
Yeah.
So is it better to have 2 rounds with full concentration, full attention, or quickly try to finish 6 more, 4 more? So is this a waste or I'm gaining something?
I would like to give you another answer you're not expecting. It's better to have all your rounds in full concentration. That should be your goal. I would just say that. I don't want to say it's better. 2 good rounds will actually, 2 good rounds will inspire your Krishna consciousness more than 4 bad rounds. That's for sure. As 2 good, 2 good anything is better than 4 bad something generally. But that shouldn't be our goal. Our goal should, because the thing is, if you can do 2 good, you can do 4 good. If you can do 4 good, you can do 6 good. So it's a matter of practice. And it's a matter of being in that consciousness that I'm actually praying for pure devotional service. If I just remember that, and if I just feel that I want that, it's so much easier. And so chanting, it's not about chanting good rounds. It's about good. You have to redefine what good is. It's praying for pure devotional service. It's not like, oh, I heard 2 rounds and I focused my mind. What's going on in here, in your heart? What were you asking for? Were you connected? Were you feeling, oh, Krishna, accept me. I turn my back on you. Let me engage in your service. Once you start feeling that, then you'll see it's easy to chant in that mood. If you try to make it too mechanical, then it's going to be hard to chant good rounds because it's disconnected from the meaning of the holy name and the heart and the vibration.
You're
and the
right.
feeling.
Like you use the mechanical word. So let's say after 2 or 3 rounds, if I feel that, oh, I lost concentration or something, then we should leave it there and come back later when.
You should get my japa affirmations book. And if you lose it, then stop chanting, read a page or 2 from that book, try to adopt the mood in that book, or that's not the only book you can read, but that book was designed for that reason, japa affirmations, or some other book on the holy name, or Prabhupada's books on the holy name, and try to recreate the mood. So it's always, you're always trying to recreate the mood as best you can. Now, if it's late at night, if you're tired, if you have a million things in your mind, obviously it's going to be a bigger challenge. But if you're doing it in the morning and you actually plan on it, plan it in a way that you can be in the best possible mood and cultivate it. When you lose that mood, just go back. Okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What's the mood? Let me read something. Then you'll see over time, you're going to do 4 good rounds and 6 good rounds and 8 good rounds. And one day, Kavita, you're going to come to the point where it'll be impossible to chant bad rounds. You won't even know how to chant bad rounds. You'll completely forget what a bad round is. Wouldn't that be good?
Prabhuji, in the temple, I have seen people chanting. So we are in the temple, so many people, and they are still chanting. They are trying to finish their round. Is that also wrong?
No. What do you mean? Finish their rounds during class or kirtan or something?
Yeah, like kirtan in the temple, attending
No,
the
you should.
temple.
Yeah. You should chant, either chant japa or kirtan, not both. If you're going to chant japa, then you go to a quiet place. It's not, it's a focused activity. So you don't want your mind going around, and you don't want things going on all around you that capture your focus. We have a video on that. It's called How Not to Chant Japa, Courtesy Japa. And it shows a devotee chanting while he's driving, someone watching television, someone doing kirtan, someone on WhatsApp, someone reading. We can't call that meditation.
Yeah, I have a friend in my train. She tries to finish it in the train, like as much as possible. So I had this thing in my mind. So today I was trying to get some clarification.
Yeah. I mean, if you can actually concentrate on a train, it's pretty difficult, but if you can, that's fine. But if you're just chanting to get them done and you can't concentrate, it's not the best. But some people don't have enough time, so they have to chant on the train because there's no other time. But it's best if you can concentrate. Okay, Pitambara, you can ask your next question. Pitambara.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, Prabhu, the follow-up question is, I do get the recipe that 16 good rounds and 4 regularly principles. But at the same time, I also do agree with Kavita Mataji that at least I'll speak for myself, the 16 rounds quality is not as much as what is expected of me. And it's a fact. Although I try to finish in 5 to 7 in the morning or, before doing anything, but still the mind wanders. So let us park that poor quality of chanting on one side, which is an impediment. The second impediment I wanted to bring to your attention is the 3 modes of material nature. Now, 3 in the morning, and we are constantly, because we have got this material body, we are constantly attacked by the 3 modes of material nature, which is part of the external energy of Krishna. And it is Krishna himself, but external energy. And Krishna confirmed that these 3 modes of material nature is extremely difficult to overcome again.
Yes.
So, and also Krishna said that lust, anger, and greed are the 3 way paths to hell, Arjuna.
Yes.
Having said all these, Prabhu, in the morning we are thinking something else. In the afternoon, our thought process is something different. In the evening or night, the thought process is again different because of the 3 modes of material nature.
Yes.
Despite our best efforts to focus, despite our best efforts to channelize what I should be and I should, using, Evam Buddhe Param Buddha, 3.43 says, Vyavasayak Mata Buddhi. We try, Prabhu, but still we fail. Not we, Prabhu, I fail. I would speak for myself.
Yeah.
How do I overcome this, Prabhu, again?
One of the secrets, thank you for the question. I think it's not really a secret, but I found that sometimes when you're like stuck, it's like, how do I get through this? I've tried this, I've tried that. Still, it's really hard for me. Association of a devotee who doesn't have that problem. Association with a devotee for whom that problem is nothing. Because by that association, all of a sudden, that problem in your life tends to shrink by that association. So that's kind of like what I would call like the, sometimes you go to the doctor and you're weak and they'll give you injection of a B vitamin, so, it's different than just taking B vitamin under your tongue. You get the injection or a whole injection of B vitamins and you come out, it's like energized, you came in weak, you've been weak, tired. So I see that kind of association works like that, just like magically, just like it's a real impetus. I would also say that I could tell you my own thinking in this process, because I was reflecting on, now for me it's 51 years. So I was reflecting on it and I was like, how did I do this? Because following the 4 regular principles for a young American man, I mean, the 3 principles are easy, but no illicit sex is like, it's difficult, very, very difficult. And it's like, how did I do that? And there may be many answers, but one answer that comes to me is that Prabhupada wanted me to do this. And he was like I felt Prabhupada like pushing behind me, like go for this. This is what you should be doing. And so it was always like, he wants me to do this. And so no matter how difficult it was, I would always think, how am I going to do this? He wants me to do it. So in my mind, I'd be thinking, go to try to see women like this, deal with my wife this way, deal with women in public this way. I would always be going in my mind so that my mind could work in a way that naturally it would be easy to control myself. Because otherwise, like you say, the modes of nature are there. What to speak of how heavy they are in the Western world. It's just a big trap. So it was always this, I feel like doing this, but I can't because Prabhupada wants me to do this. So I got myself kind of this habit of, it didn't matter what I felt, because if it was something Prabhupada didn't want me to do, that would always have to predominate. That's what he wanted. So like, how could you do this after all these years? Did you chant 16 rounds every day? Yes. Did you follow the principles? Yes, more or less. Way better than I ever thought I could, at least. Do you have trouble following them now? No, not really. How did that happen? It was just because I'd always turn away from Maya, because I would just think, well, Prabhupada doesn't want me to do that. And so there was a lecture and Prabhupada said, one of the greatest impetuses for following is your love for your guru. He said, and then the other thing, which is really interesting, which a lot of us don't think about. I started thinking about, if I do this, what's the consequence? If I do this, what's the consequence? Okay, if I do the Krishna conscious thing, great consequences. If I do the other thing, horrible consequences. I'll hate myself for doing that. And so I began contemplating the concept of self-compassion. Like, to be Krishna conscious, you have to have compassion for yourself. What is self-compassion? I'm going to follow these principles out of compassion for myself, because it will help me become Krishna conscious. So there's my love for Prabhupada. There's also my love for myself. So I developed this little mantra. If a crazy thought came to my mind, I would say, I love myself too much to do that to myself. I love myself too much to allow myself to do that, because I know the consequence would destroy me on some level. So I found that really, really powerful. And I've shared that with other devotees who've also found it useful. Like, if I really want to do this, but it's going to be destructive. And I say, I love myself too much to allow myself to suffer like that. So that's interesting and helpful. And the third thing that's helped me was that I looked at what Prabhupada was giving. Well, it's not only the 3 things, but I looked at what Prabhupada was giving. And he was giving so much, and it's like, how could I not take it? Am I such a fool? Turn my back on everything he's given? And today we were having a little meeting, and Rabindra Swarup was saying that the 4 regulative principles, he said, don't see them as moral principles, see them as principles of knowledge, because by following them, then you get the enlightenment from within. They're principles of, this is how you understand Krishna consciousness. So all these things put together, then what I found was really, really helpful, and it was naturally a byproduct of this, but you could also think this way, you start to see the benefits of doing the austerity. And so that instead of the austerity seeming difficult, it becomes attractive. Oh, this is so attractive. I want to be celibate. It's such a beautiful thing to be celibate. It's such a beautiful thing to chant 16 rounds. Getting up early in the morning, it's such a beautiful thing. Doing some austerity, it's such a beautiful thing. So it reorients your mind to all these difficult things, but you stop looking at the difficulty, you just look at the beauty of what you get from doing it. And so you become attracted to the austerity, and austerity no longer becomes austere, it becomes beautiful. So these are the ways that I have thought. And recently I was like kind of articulating something that I do, which I didn't really talk about before, but it was this point that I was making, but I'll elaborate on it, that I realized that if you want to be Krishna conscious, you always have to adjust your mind in a way so that it's easy for you to be Krishna conscious, because the mind can work against you, right? So let's say I'm looking at a situation and it's bothering me, and I think, if I allow this situation to bother me, I'm going to be disturbed all the time. It's going to disturb my Krishna consciousness. I might make some offense to somebody. I might become discouraged. So let me look at the situation in a different way. And I would just kind of like, it was like like typing in on a computer and getting a new figure, something to come out and I go, oh, well, if I look at it this way, then I can understand why he did that, and I can understand the circumstances. So now I'm not disturbed. It doesn't bother my Krishna consciousness. I don't feel like offending anybody. So I was just thinking, when you look at the mind and you look at what you want in life, you always have to gear your mind to support where you want to go. Because otherwise it's like you want to go north, but you're driving south. So that's something I think I just started naturally doing out of realization that we can do that. And not only can we do it, we have to, because we're not always going to see things in the right way. We're going to, see things that could work against us. I'm envious of this devotee. Okay, how could I appreciate that devotee? Because I don't want to be envious because it's going to hurt me. Or I'm attracted to this, but this isn't good for me. How can I see it in a way where I won't be attracted? And I saw that Paramatma would start recalibrating my brain, so to speak, to see it in a different way, which would support my Krishna consciousness. So in my preaching, I always try to put things in a context where people will see it in a way that naturally will make it easier for them and to go up, because the mind will do the opposite. The mind will put in a context where you go, that's so hard, I can't do that, isn't it? So in realizing that, I thought, well, I don't want that in my life. I want it to be easy, right? So that's what I've learned to do.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I have a
Hare
quick
Krishna.
question for you, a certain comment.
Thank you.
in
Thank you
terms
so
of-
much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yes,
Uh,
you're welcome.
Prabhu, thank you for the nice class. How do you reconcile the statement of Srila Prabhupada? This is something real, and I'm sure you have heard. On a morning walk at Juhu, one time, Giriraj Swami uttered a sentence somewhat to the extent that Srila Prabhupada, sometimes we are in Maya. And Srila Prabhupada stopped dead in his tracks and he said that you're always in Maya. And that Giriraj Swami later writes that it humbled me. So when we sometimes feel that we've done a great job chanting, or perhaps, how would you reconcile your statement and explain when you mentioned that, oh, I haven't seen Maya in a week, or I haven't seen Maya. So, this is an interesting point that I wanted to kind of get clarification. And also,
Yeah.
in connection with this, Raghunath Das Goswami especially has written a book known as Manaha Siksha, the instructions to the mind. And in verse number 6 in particular, Raghunath Das Goswami is saying, oh, wicked mind, although you adopt the path of sadhana, you imagine yourself purified by bathing in the trickling urine of the great donkey of full-blown deceit and hypocrisy. So should we pat ourselves in the back when we've had those great rounds going on and we are feeling in the ninth cloud? Or should we feel what Prabhupada told Giriraj Swami, or what Raghunath Das Goswami mentions in Manasiksha number 6. If you
Good
would please throw
question.
some light
I,
on
I
those
can
two.
tell you how I feel. I feel if I'm feeling inspired in Krishna consciousness, if I'm feeling, that feeling when some days or sometime you're in Vrindavan or some parikrama or some class or some festival, and you just don't feel attraction. You don't, it's like, there's nothing here that I want. You could hand me the whole world. I'd be like, no, take it. I don't want it. I feel like it doesn't mean that I'm not always in Maya. It just means there's a lot of mercy right now that covering that Maya. And I always feel like it's not me, it's the mercy of my guru. And somehow or other, by my chanting, I got that mercy. By my effort, I got the mercy, but it's not by my effort I became Krishna conscious. By my effort, I got the mercy, and the mercy made me Krishna conscious. And without that mercy, yeah, full-blown Maya, I'd be helpless. Take that mercy away. It's like you're holding me up. If you stop holding me, I fall. So that's how I personally experience it. And when we say, oh, mind, you're wicked and this and that, we can also say it in terms of potential. Like, if I am not Krishna conscious, that's what you're going to strangle me. You're going to destroy me. But while I'm Krishna conscious, you really can't do that. And just the fact that you could tell the mind they're wicked means there's some level of being separate from the mind and not influenced by it, isn't it? But it's a recognition. Like, you have a dog, he's really ferocious and he's tied up on a chain to a pole, and you're talking to it and you go, yeah, you're a bad dog. I'm not going to let you off that chain, because if I let you off that chain, you're going to eat me up. So that's how I see it. So you the dog's bad, but as long as he's on that chain, he's tame. That's how I see it. So it's because if we don't see it that way, we've lost our humility, and then we think I'm doing it instead of Prabhupada doing it, or my spiritual master, or the mercy of Mahaprabhu. So I've always come, I don't say always, but in my old age in Krishna consciousness, I've come to experience that anytime I'm feeling really inspired, or maybe I'm getting some realization, or whatever it is, or achieving something, it's just, to me, it's just so obvious it's not me. It's that I've been somehow or other able to get out of the way so Prabhupada could use me. And I feel like, well, that's at least my credit that I got out of the way, but it's not my credit that I'm not that energy. I'm not that Swarup Shakti that's doing it, but I'm allowing that Swarup Shakti to work through me. That's my only credit. And even while I'm doing that, that wicked mind's trying to destroy me at the same time. And I know it. And if I give it a chance, it will. That's how I process it myself. And, it's like, or you could say, even though we're in Maya, look what we did. We made Hare Krishna a household word. And if you ask all of the devotees who did it, you go, yeah, I just followed Prabhupada. Otherwise, without that, I'm total Maya. But we followed it. This is what he wanted, and we were successful. So it's something like that. Is that okay? Or you have an idea you want to share?
No. It's sometimes, you have two feelings,
Yeah.
but better to take the humble position.
Yeah.
And instead of, that feeling comes, sometimes Krishna is very kind, Prabhupada is very kind, Guru Maharaj is very kind to give you a certain state of consciousness.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, if that turns into some kind of a pride, then we are in the utmost danger.
Yeah,
That is why perhaps Srila Prabhupada said that you're always in Maya. Remember that.
Yeah. One very strong realization Krishna gave me was that if I empower you and you ever think that's you, I will take it away from you. Like I got that so strong that I was actually scared. Like I was scared to be scared to be proud, because I'm doing service and I can see Krishna's giving me intelligence or inspiration to do the service. And I think I am so dependent on him to give me that. I don't ever want to lose that by foolishly thinking that it's me. So when I got that realization, I was actually like I developed a very healthy fear. No matter what I do or how I'm praised or whatever, I'm extremely cautious. Don't think that's you, because Krishna is allowing you to do this because you don't think it's you. And he'll allow you to do more if you don't think it's you. But as soon as he thinks it's you, he's just going to pull the plug out. And you won't be able to do that. So I'm actually afraid. I'm actually afraid of pride. It scares me because I feel like it's like, your relationship with your wife or something. There's one thing you could do that would destroy it, and you're just afraid, even though you have a tendency to do it. I can't do it because it'll kill her. It'll kill the relationship. Something like that's how I feel. So
That
I
is
think that's
why,
good.
the fact that you mentioned the bhajan, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Gopinath, Mama Nivedana Suno, in that, such a humble stance the Acharya is taking, that
Yes.
everywhere it's Maya, and I have no strength on my
Yeah.
own. Sakala
Yes.
tumare Maya, nahi mama bala. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is praying. So, and I always, tell myself that we should learn how to pray like the Acharyas.
Yes. Yes.
So that we feel, even it might be contrived humility at this point of our
Yes.
lives, but eventually, with that determination and desire, we can attain that level of humility. Uh, and all the songs of Sharanagati, Dainya, in the section and the branch of humility, so wonderful, deep realizations that just kind of pinpoints us and pinpoints me rather than
Yeah.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that question does arise, though. How do they feel like that? I
Yeah.
mean, they are eternally the associates of Radharani,
Yeah. Yeah.
and very close to all the gopis and everything. Then how is it possible? Like even Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami feels lower than a worm in the stool. This is something very hard to conceive, and I
Right.
really didn't get an answer to that till today. That I know they are humble, that I know they are so, but at the same time, the mercy of Krishna is so great. Then how can they be? How can they be so low, or how can they feel so low? So this is like a double-edged sword. If
Well,
you
it's
are able
also,
to throw some light, and if you have
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. It's also like if we look at ecstatic symptoms, that's also difficult to understand. Mahaprabhu was going mad and going unconscious. It's like, did you ever go unconscious in love? It's like, what kind of love is that? Your limbs are going inside your body. What kind of love is that? What's going on here? So it's a little bit like that, because that humility is a byproduct of their prema, or at least bhava, but I would say prema. It's a byproduct of their prema. That's how it manifests. So now we're looking at it as conditioned souls. It makes no sense to us because we can't fathom thinking that way. Why would anyone think that way? How could anyone think that way? Especially they're the most elevated. But when you start to understand it as an ecstatic manifestation of prema, then it starts to make sense. Oh, that's how you feel when you have prema. So I was thinking, when you're asking that question, of answering you and say, well, when you have prema, you'll get the answer. You'll totally understand, because you'll be feeling that also. And like sometimes when they would ask Prabhupada, something about the spiritual world, and he'd say, well, you just have to go, because he couldn't answer it. It's like you can't understand it. So the best I can explain it is that it's a byproduct of prema, that anyone who has prema will naturally feel this intense humility. And perhaps the easiest way to understand it is whoever doesn't have prema will have a big ego. So they'll feel the opposite, right? So as you go up in your ego, you will feel more and more great and less low. As you go up in your love, you'll feel lower and lower. And well, what's the definition of humility? The definition of humility is you think everyone's better than you. The story of Yudhisthira. So once you understand that's the definition of humility, that somehow he sees everyone better than a worm and stool, that makes sense, because nothing's lower than that. Even a blade of grass is better than a worm and stool. If I had a choice, I'd rather be a blade of grass than a worm and stool. So everything's above me. Wow, what a vision. Mahabhagawat, everyone's a devotee but me. So it's the same thing. It's just we have to sit back and just say, that's what happens when you have love of Krishna. Inconceivably, you think everybody's better than you. And it's like, how can I understand that? You know, that's crazy. It's not true. Even in my state, you know, some people are below me, some are above, but it's not that how they think. And so we get a glimpse of that. And it's very humbling, right? When we start to think, how many devotees do you think you're better than? How many non-devotees do you think you're better than? How many animals do you think you're better than? And then you realize, oh, the Mahabhagavad, no, he thinks he's on the bottom of the pile. Wow. You can only look at that and just say, wow, I can't understand this. This is like amazing. But it can purify us.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
It's an ecstatic symptom. It's that's, you know, it's kind of a crazy. You want to hear a story? This is the same thing. Prabhupada said to his disciples, open 108 temples, and then I will be satisfied I can die after having served my Guru Maharaj, and then go to hell. That's what he said, that I can be satisfied. Once these 108 temples are open, I can die in peace and then go to hell. And devotee said, Prabhupada, if you're going to hell, we're going with you. He said, no, you're going to Vaikuntha, I'm going to hell. It's the same thing. That's a manifestation of prema. That's, you know, we say Prabhupada came down to the Madhyam platform, but once in a while, you see him pop up to the Uttama and say something like that, like, you know, which he normally didn't do, or, you know, choke up during Jairada Madhava, something like that.
Or even on the Jaldut, the poem,
Yeah,
Markine Bhagwat.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I'm nothing. And Prabhupada always said, I didn't do anything. He always said that. My Guru Maharaj did it. So we really meant to look at that and see that, okay, that's what it looks like when you have prema. So at least I can try to reflect some of that sunshine on me so that I don't think I'm better than others just because I have a degree you don't have. I have more zeros in my bank account. I live in this neighborhood, you know, all the things that make us feel we're better. If we look at Gopinath, at least maybe we could get that from that song, that I'm no better than anyone. I'm just a struggling soul, and I need Krishna's mercy. And anything that I can do that's good, that's just a blessing on me by Srila Prabhupada. But other than that, it's just his mercy. I just followed what he did. What he told me to do, I did it. That's if you are Krishna conscious, if you're actually Krishna conscious, you will feel you're not Krishna conscious, and that's why you'll feel low like that. You the more you have it, the more you will feel you don't have it. The less you have it, the more you think you have it. That's why they feel that way. They don't think they have it. That's the byproduct of prema. You know that story? Mahaprabhu wanted to kill himself. Said, why you want to kill yourself? He said, because I'm maintaining my body and I haven't died. I should have died in separation. So what's the point of maintaining my body? It's useless. Who's going to think that way without prema?
Yeah, that is Radharani. She and the gopis, they also, in the meeting with Krishna at Kurukshetra, they also feel they say the same thing. And of course, Mahaprabhu has repeated the sentiment of Radharani, that if we really loved you, then we you know, that shows that we don't love you enough because we have
Yeah.
maintained our bodies and we are
Exactly.
still alive.
Exactly.
So yeah, that is the zenith or
Yeah.
the crescendo of
Yes.
of prema. So true.
Yeah. So we just look at that and it's like, all we can say is, wow, isn't it? And then you process it, you know, what am I supposed to get from this? And maybe we'll get a little bit more of humility, you know, because it's hard for us to be humble. But maybe we can get a little bit more from that intense humility. And that'll help us. That'll help us tremendously in our bhakti. Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much, Prabhuji.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So is there anybody else who may want to quickly ask one or two questions before we move into the next part of the program? So Kavita Mataji, I think maybe you can write to Prabhuji directly, if you don't mind. I would rather have somebody else be given an opportunity if there's somebody else, if that's okay. You know, with a lot of folded hands, I request you. You know, and we still have the ending kirtan, but I still wanted to open up the microphone for anybody else who has not taken the opportunity to ask Prabhuji any questions or any clarifications. Maybe a last couple of minutes. If not, then I would like to request His Grace Venkateshwar Prabhu and Snigdha Kanta Mataji to uh, start the ending kirtan. But prior to that, a couple quick announcements. Tomorrow is Apara Ekadashi. So please fast from beans and grains. Of course, whatever I'm speaking is based on our time zone, which is the East Coast, Toronto time zone. And also it is the appearance of a very great Acharya, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur is an incarnation of Vyasdev. It is said Vyasdev composed the Vedas and so many auxiliary literatures, including Srimad Bhagavatam. And Vrindavan Das Thakur composed the wonderful biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu known as the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And he actually appeared to the niece of Srivasacharya, Malini Mataji's niece, and she had taken shelter at Malini Mataji's house, or her father's house rather, Vasudev Datta, and there at Vrindavan Das Thakur appeared. This particular place is Mamgachi. So if you go to Mayapur, please visit that place. It's a very serene place, very beautiful, full potent of energy, spiritual energy. So, and he was very, her mother, his mother, Narayani Mataji, was very fortunate. Actually, she was able to receive the full remnants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when Mahaprabhu, and then Vrindavan Das Thakur actually appeared 4 years after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's sannyas. And he has composed this wonderful Chaitanya Bhagavat, from which actually Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami writes in his introduction that it is due to his inspiration, him and one more, Chaitanya Mangal, that he has been able to compose Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we beg for Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur's mercy for our advancement in spiritual life. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. And on Monday, it is the breaking of the Ekadashi fast, known as Dwadashi Paran. And again, this is for the Toronto time or the East Coast. The breakfast time is between 5:36 a.m. to 10:43 a.m. Again, I repeat that, 5:36 a.m. to 10:43 a.m. Monday morning for breaking the Ekadashi fast. So thank you very much. Now I would like to, and once again, Mahatma Prabhuji, thank you for your association, for your wisdom
welcome.
and sharing your wonderful class about the mind and the actual topic itself, you know, which is very, very inspiring and very helpful when we actually contemplate on how to improve our spiritual life. So please come back again. It was our
Thank you.
pleasure to host you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
All
Hare
glories to
Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada.
Haribol.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
So Venkat Prabhu, and I would request everybody else to mute themselves just in case if there is an occasional phone call or some kind of a distraction. That way we can concentrate on the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Venkat Prabhu, please unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji, I can hear you. Thank you. We can hear you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, I would also like to mention that Mahatma Prabhu, I think, left his email ID in the chat. So if,
Thank you, Venkat Prabhu.
yeah,
So,
it is optional.
Kavita Mataji, if you look at the chat, Prabhuji has posted his email, or any other devotee that would like to get in touch with him and, seek clarification or guidance, please avail of that opportunity. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
In the call. Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Jai Om Vishnupat Paramahansa Parivajagacharya Stottra Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupat Paramahansa Parivajagacharya Stottra Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya Acharya Guruvar ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय। पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। समावेद गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gaurang. All glories to His Divine Grace Prabhupada. Kali Pavan Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Iskcon Niagara Yatra ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much, all of you, for attending today's weekly Saturday program. Again, once again, our thanks to His Grace Mahatma Das Prabhuji. And you all have a wonderful, safe week, a Krishna conscious week. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Thank you. Hare Krishna.